without saying we have a fantastic panel of experts drawn from diverse backgrounds. We have Mr. Belapure having a fantastic experience of how many years? 46 years in the industry. So, yeah. So in a recent event, somebody actually referred to him as the Bhishma Pitamaha of Indian manufacturing. So we are really lucky to have him. Thank you so much, sir. Uh, so, and similarly goes for other speakers. Achin, of course, I have had known him for a very long time. Uh, you know, the kind of experience that he has covered, and then heading Cipla itself is a pride moment. So thank you so much. Amrut Medekar, again, underplayed champion, I must say. Many, many years working in the background. Now he's actually leading the CEO position at Ecums. Again, a very strong, growth-oriented company. Just recently got listed a couple of months ago, so we'll hear him also. And of course, thank you so much, Mr. Panchal, for giving time. I know the compliance norms of global MNCs, and he's still found time. And yeah, hopefully we'll have a fantastic conversation. So let me start from you, Mr. Panchal. The world of pharma is actually changing so fast. Technology is at the core of all that we do, from, you know, embracing AI. And by the way, today itself, I saw in Stat News a very provocative statement coming from Robert Califf, US FDA commissioner, saying most of the AI-driven tools in pharma are actually finance-oriented, not patient-oriented. I myself beg to differ, because I have seen a lot of changes that have been brought in by AI. QRAI is one such example where fantastic learning has happened. So take us through those waves of changes that you have seen as an MNC, and of course, drive it back to how it is so relevant to Indian context.
Thank you very much, Vikas, for the opportunity on the ET Pharma, and thanks to the panelists joining us. So let me start by saying that I think the industry is changing, of course, but I think the purpose of why we are here across India and across the globe, whether it is MNC or in-country pharmaceutical company, is to make a meaningful difference to the patients. That is the purpose. And we at AstraZeneca also believe really that how we can make a meaningful difference and be present where we can make a meaningful difference. That's one part. The purpose doesn't change. I would start with that. The second part is, I think, over the decades and in future, how do we bring science to patients faster is something becoming even more important. And bringing science faster is also to understand the whole environment of digital AI data science. How do we bring innovation in regulatory? How do we bring technology in clinical trials? How do we bring AI and the governance of that? And how do we all come together to have the regulators and the whole system coming together to ensure that we have a very strong advantage of technology pharma. So we are seeing fintech, for example, coming in, but we are also seeing, like you have put nicely, health tech is an important thing. So overall, I would start by saying, first of all, the purpose for us remains the same. For all of us to help as many patients as possible. Each company is at a different stage, I would say. And I was reading at one of the reports from NASSCOM, and we participate there as well, NASSCOM and Kantar Health, and they were saying 8 out of 10 companies have adopted some form of AI, but it is at a very starting stage. But how do we, and maybe one company, I don't know the name of the company as such, but one company has really embedded into the whole system. There's a long way to go. So starting with purpose, adoption of AI in companies is happening. And maybe I'll give some examples of AstraZeneca. We are focusing on 3 things. One is, how do we bring science and innovation to help billions of people across the world? Second is, how do we use data, AI, and technology? Because we really believe that the way we can help the disease burden across the world and the aging population, science is the power to unlock, which we need to do. And third is, we are passionate, and I'm really passionate about that, both across, I've worked in different countries, but also how do we ensure we make a difference to people, society, and the planet. So one thing which we are doing is Cure AI, as you rightly said. We are using technology to help detect lung cancer early. So one of our mission is, can we eliminate lung cancer as a cause of death? Now, won't be able to do it if you won't partner with technology company. Science is a solution, but you need to detect that early so you can help more patients. So we are doing about 1 million scans across the world. That's how do you use that technology there. Then we using India startups. So we have Tricog, which came as an India startup, helping for heartbeat and helping to detect heart attacks earlier, or detect heart attack and have, let's say, treatment early, and we have taken to different countries. So it's a good thing about doing in India for India, but also across the world. And we are very proud of our recent announcement, which you would have heard. We have announced 250 crores of our investment into a non-listed entity for Global Innovation and Technology Center, Global Business Services, and R&D Bangalore, in which we are really driving digital and innovation to help healthcare all put together. So the purpose remains same. How do you embed technology to help more patients, either in early diagnosis and screening, or can we make even clinical trial process faster overall? And the third point for us, very passionate about sustainability. As you know, 5% of global emission, approximately 5% of global emissions are from the healthcare. So how do we all together, whether it is multinationals or Indian or any other company, come together to ensure that we are making this whole value chain more sustainable? As we drive technology. So we have smart factories. We are spending $1 billion to decarbonize our whole value chain. And again, I'm really proud to say AstraZeneca is one of the company that announced more than 60 million trees in Meghalaya in the concept of decarbonization or ambition carbon zero. That's the biggest investment any multinational company would have done in India, but we really believe we want to do for the people, for the society, and for the planet. So 60 million trees in Meghalaya on 20,000 acre of land, helping many livelihoods as farmers together. So what has changed in pharma, in summary, is that it is not the last treatment part. We are coming earlier in terms of how do we detect early, screen early, how do we make our regulatory and clinical trials helping more patients to detect things early, bring technology in that, but also remain sustainable while we do this together. So that's the change I have seen in my 2 decades of career in pharma. Thank you.
That's an absolute winner. To have 60 million trees, I think you're actually building an entire forest. So, yeah, so it's, we speak about beyond the pill. I think this is also a way, literally going beyond the pill. So, yeah, and of course, I mean, when you speak about emission, it's the right point to move to Achin. And, being a respiratory giant, Cipla, and Cipla being the name that it is, how do you want to define technology and tie it with patient centricity? This will be a huge topic right now in Delhi, not so much, luckily so much in Mumbai, but a big issue. So do you really, because, strictly from the outside view, we've been hearing patient centricity, keeping the patient in the center of everything that we do. On ground, we don't see that actually translating. So if you can actually take us through some of these illustrations, how you are actually trying to make the change, and what next?
So I think very relevant point, and I would build on what Sanjeev just said. As an industry, we are responsible for providing medicines, but more importantly, we are responsible for generating the right outcomes for the patients. And that is where this patient centricity kicks in. So if I come to respiratory as a condition, as you rightly said, it is actually one of the largest causes of mortality in our country as well. And irrespective of pollution or even in other parts. So we have been championing how do we make it accessible, how do we remove the taboos of using the right therapy, which is the inhaler, and how do you make it easy for a patient to be able to follow that therapy. So I'll give you one example which will bring alive this patient centricity part. A lot of patients use MDIs, where you have to actuate and then breathe at the same time. Otherwise, the drug goes and sits at the back of your throat instead of going inside the lung. So we came up with a breath-actuated device. It's called Synchro Breathe, which it gets actuated when you breathe in. And that is hugely helpful for patients like elderly, etc., a lot of COPD patients who find it very hard to coordinate that physical dexterity movement and the breathing. And it has been a very big success. We presented a paper at the ERS last year where we showed that 94% of patients found it easy to use, and 99% actually said they found it easier than their previous device. So this is where all this buzzword of patient centricity comes into an actual usage from a respiratory standpoint. What we're also doing is we are trying to solve for the problem of early diagnosis and point of care diagnosis. Because if we see in a country like India particularly, there are 10 times more patients who actually have the condition versus those who are active on the treatment. So early diagnosis and the right diagnosis is also equally important. So for respiratory, we came up with a handheld spirometer, because spirometers are still not that common. If we go to any regular labs, you may not find a spirometer. So we came up with a handheld pneumatic device called Spirofy, which is to bring the diagnosis closer, because if you have an actual reading, the patient will be more convinced about the need to be on the right treatment. Likewise, we are now working on, we have installed a lot of point of care devices, so which goes beyond respiratory. So there's something called SIP point, where if a patient needs diagnostic in, let's say, 20 minutes. So you can measure regular parameters, but you can also measure tropi and heart markers, right? Where in 20 minutes you get your diagnosis, where otherwise you may have to wait for a whole day. So stuff like this is where we try to bring the patient centricity element so that ultimately, if right diagnosis, right usage, and therefore the right outcome is what we are chasing.
Basically, when you have a monthly turnover of around 1100 crore is what you do in a month. So that's like 12,000 crore in a year. As a leader in the business, I think these are all innovations which actually go to show the kind of commitment that Cipla has. The point is, are we actually lacking in terms of the global scale? Because serving the Indian patient itself will be a bulk of a lot of, the disease prevalence that is happening. So when do we have that point where we can actually take it to the global innovation game?
I think a very good point. So look, India for India and then India for world. These are the two challenges, right? So a lot of what I described on patient centricity, we've started out as India for India. Some of the models can actually be taken outside as well. So maybe just another example, we are deploying a face scan technology. So reading the blood flow under your skin through a regular smartphone, it can read 20 vitals. So now, stuff like this has a lot of applicability in a market like India, where literally your diagnosis becomes free. And when you spend maybe 2 minutes inside a doctor's chamber versus going out and getting a test and whether or not you come back with that test, all this makes it more scientific, right? At the same time, there are a lot of these initiatives between what we do and what the biotech world does. What Sanjeev just mentioned, Pure AI is a brilliant example. They have built not just on Indian database, right? They're building on global database. And that same technology is going all over the world in helping better diagnosis. The issues may not be identical, but the need gap is definitely there. So I think that's how the technology bridging between India for India and India for global is happening as we see. On the product side, it will take longer because obviously the whole ecosystem needs to come up for novel R&D. So there, I think it's still some time away. There's a lot of initiatives to promote that, both from government side as well as smaller biotechs are coming up. But we are seeing examples of that as well, right? CAR-T is one such area. So I'm hopeful, Vikas. I think we're not there yet, but I'm very hopeful we are moving in the right direction. And companies, both Indian organizations and multinationals who are operating in India are moving it one step closer, as well as the biotech and with support from the government.
Yeah, so first two panel experts on the patient side on how to reach the market in a better way. The second part of it will be on the back end, the manufacturing, which is again the backbone. So Amrut, if I can move to you on the question of making manufacturing the real lean and mean machine, sticking with the theme of this panel. How do we move in that direction where the sustainability part is also maintained, your efficiencies? We will be having a panel on Pharma 4.0 where the world is moving, but in the given constraints where you are actually the biggest CDMO in India, how do you manage those efficiencies? Because this is again about being how frugal you are, at the same time not compromising on quality. It's a very difficult task. How do you want to keep the FDAs of the world away from you?
Okay. Thanks, Vikas, and thanks so much for this opportunity. And both Sanjeev and Achin has really taken the complete essence of what the patient centricity is for our country. Obviously, the backbone for the country would be, as Mr. Dandekar said, the manufacturing part of it, that how do you service all the demand that we have. Having said that, we at Akums strongly believe that India is poised for a greater leap forward. We expect around $130 billion of turnover by 2030 for Indian market. Today, for us, it is close to around 13.5% of all the drugs which are consumed in India are manufactured in Akums. And almost 30%, that is one-third, close to one-third of all the CDMO portion is taken by Akums. Now, at that scale, which is around 49.5 billion units, right? So maintaining quality standards is the key. Because I firmly believe that pharmaceutical runs on four things. One is access, which is important for India today. The most important part is access. Second will be affordability. And third will be quality. And fourth will be the compliance across all the regulatory and the laws of the land. Now, if you look at all these four areas, Akums has to play a very important role if we intend to have the repeatability. And therefore, the automation or IT integration is very, very important for us today. We have around 12 manufacturing units, 2 are going live. And if we have to maintain the quality standards across these chains, right? So one, you will require a centralized quality management system. Second would be that whether you'll be able to monitor them online, remotely, and able to get any kind of CAPA, if at all it is there, and you are able to resolve it on time, on the go. Because there is no chance of going for any kind of a line shutdown and then going for a repeat this thing. So you'll have to do it on the go. Third piece would be that you require a regular audit, both internal as well as external, so that any kind of deviations can be resolved. Fourth, you will have to have something which is called as automation in the system, because human errors have to be minimized in terms of any kind of quality issues which will be coming on the way. I think looking at all of this, India today, not just Akums, but most of the Indian pharma is getting ready, because government is also pushing forward. Now you have Schedule M also being planned. You have integration of most of the WHO GMP certification compliance required for most of the manufacturing that you do. So therefore, going forward, I see that most of the regulatory issues will be resolved and India will be more and more quality compliant. Yeah.
Yeah, so next is you. Basically, being an advisor to the industry, you have the task of actually managing expectations right at the top of the heap, where large companies are part of IPA. At the same time, there is like a massive bottom of around 3,000 units that we have. And again, as we know, some bad apples actually bring the reputation down of the entire industry. And we've seen a lot of efforts being made from the government on Schedule M, placing deadlines. How do you see the entire industry actually adopting? On one side, we are talking about digitalization, making automation, all of those things happening. At the same time, sticking to the bare minimum standards is also difficult. Putting a tough one on you. So.
I was wondering why it is not operating. Okay, I think very interesting question. Probably we must define what is lean and mean from the Indian pharma point of view. And it is not a very different definition than what we are looking at worldwide. But we have got special meaning, particularly lean and mean. If we don't adopt lean practices in our manufacturing, we will not be able to compete at all in the market. We have, from the what is the innovative in the products to the generic products, I think we have brought the 99% revolution over there. Means, I think in American market, if you see, some survey was come, which was talking about out of 100 prescriptions, 90 prescriptions are for generic drugs and 10 prescriptions are for the innovative drugs. And when you look at the amount spent on this, 90% is spent on the innovative drugs and 10% spent on the, so it is exactly reversed. So you can see what value change it has brought over the period, making the drugs available and affordable to the majority of the people. So patient-centric definition probably works very well over there. And we talk about India now. We have got 10,000 manufacturing units in India. People say this, 3,000 companies and 10,000 manufacturing units. And the top of the list, top of the companies' factories, you'll find in the India, better than some of the European or US companies. At the same time, you'll find some of the very filthy or where it is manufactured in one room, I'm not saying filthy or something, in one room type of situation also there. And I think government has rightly pointed out, if you want to stand in the tomorrow in the international market, we need to have the minimum basic standard which is required to be followed. And probably government has taken the recent step, first step at least, revising the Schedule M and adapting those standards. Probably that's the first step. We have to follow a lot of steps to go to the ICH standards and probably tomorrow's European and US standards over the period. It will take time. It's not easy journey. But we have run some miles. We have to go miles to go before we do any particular things. And I think a lot of adoption related to the, see, before a few years, before we entered into the US or European market, it was all a domestic market. And that time I think drug price control orders were, I'm seeing it from 77, so you have to give me that benefit, what we used to do earlier. So that time there was no pressure on us for the cost reduction, simplification, efficiencies. Those were the words not very really in our dictionary at that time. The day in which we entered into the US market, I think these started focusing on optimizing our resources, improving our supply chain, getting onto the time, reducing the cost. This becomes very important. And today, that's why our Indian industry could stand into the generic competitiveness. I think there are a lot of things still to be done. I think with the digital technologies and what you talked about, AI-based technology, things will further change and improve. That's what I believe. Right. Thank you.
Right. Okay, so since you touched upon the global aspirations, Amrut, what are the challenges that you feel can be overcome? We've spoken a lot about the geopolitical changes happening. Biosecure is something that has been seen very closely from the Indian point of view. Do you think that will help India? And from the Indian standpoint, from the technological standpoint, I was recently told about this whole API price fluctuations that keep happening. And while, the Chinese side will be having their own price competitiveness in terms of manufacturing or in terms of having to grab the market from slipping to their Indian counterparts, there was also a mention about how they have adapted to enzymatic technology in a big way, which gives them better yields, which gives them a lot of more production power. Do you think those are the factors where we have always been following what the world has been doing, or we can also kind of set a benchmark?
Good question. See, US Biosecure Act, you'll have to look at it from a different perspective altogether. One is, as Mr. Bilapure said, 10% of the patented or products, they contribute almost 90% of their medical bill for the US, right? Now, if you look at the cost, the price at which they sell, right? The cost of production is into single digits. I'll not put a number to it, but into single digit. In that single digit, the API contribution is further less. So overall, I don't think that US pharmas will move to India because of cost advantage. They will move here for quality and reliability, right? And today, China plus one, as we talk about globally, but it is more of India plus one now, right? That's what going to be scenario over the years. But you'll have to understand one thing, that supply chains are very difficult to change. They don't change overnight, right? This will take long time because there are long-term agreements which are already in place. But as those agreements individually come to expire, the opportunity for Indians or India organizations open up. And therefore, I see this Biosecure Act is going to play in the long term, not in the immediate term, or not even immediate term or a short term, right? So it will happen over maybe next 4 or 5 years or a decadal opportunity for you. But for sure, Indian companies are poised to make a huge game out of this. And I'm sure the API play will also get stabilized over a period of time because of this.
Right, Achin. So you've seen the global R&D spectrum very closely from your experience. What we've seen in terms of our counterparts in China, again about CAR-T itself, there are hundreds of trials happening there. Again, in terms of adoption of technology, they are very quick. A lot of scientists, again, we are in the middle of the AMR week. A lot of scientists have worked wonderfully in global R&D labs. Here, they don't see that kind of incentive push. Of course, a lot of good things are happening lately. In the last couple of years, we've seen that. But where do you think are these gaps which can be fixed? Because this is the cusp of technology. We've seen the world changing. Will we still be having those same amount of rants that we have been having in the last 2 decades? People are actually fast-tracking trials. You've mentioned about your, how trials can be quickly done. What are those gaps that you can see from your standpoint?
Question, as we talk about moving to India for the world and moving to a very high level of innovation. And China clearly did not follow the same path that we did. We became leaders on volume front in this case. We became leaders on the generic side. And I think they've leapfrogged that to a certain extent, and they've come into the high-tech world. I was seeing some data recently, I think 150 plus programs on bispecifics and ADCs in development in China alone, right? So I think staggering numbers. And the thing which is important is, one, from our capability standpoint, we have been going up the value chain. If you see, even as we cater to generics, we're coming to more and more complex generics. And like our strategy at Cipla is also to go after more complex products. So which, in many ways, it brings the capability in-house, right? The next question is, what will give us truly innovative stuff out of India? And for that, I think what we eventually need to see is the full ecosystem, because it's not one company which will eventually do everything from preclinical all the way to commercial. There are many players in the chain, and the more the number of players, the better it is, because they all support each other. And I think that ecosystem is going to happen. We are seeing it happening because people are realizing the opportunities there. There is acceptance of quality, there's acceptance of the science that we have, and there is acceptance of, and there's so much Indian origin scientists who are already there in all the developed markets, right? So there's also traffic back and forth between all of those research minds. So in my view, I think this will take not a linear approach. This will be a function of in-house investments. This will be the ecosystem, the government R&D policy, and this will be a lot of partnerships as well. Like if I see the kind of stuff we are doing, we've taken a stake in an mRNA discovery company, which is actually headquartered in Germany. But that gives us an into the most cutting edge technology of mRNA delivery through the lung, which has not happened before. Right? We are doing work in stem cell technology with a company called Stemputics, where again we have a partnership. So there's a number of bets which we are taking. I'm sure there's a number of bets which a lot of our peer companies are taking. And then, with all of that, the ecosystem starts evolving, which is what I think will take us there. At some point, regulations also have a role to play in this. So, the markets like US, Europe, if you file for a completely novel clinical trial, there's actually guidance which comes from the other side saying, look at this, don't look at that. I'm not comfortable with that, So that comfort also will evolve, and because that's not a one-day job, right? If today you come with a novel first in class, you need that input back, right? So I think a lot of these things are interlinked, and that's where I'm saying it will probably not be a linear journey. It will have to straddle all these paths. There will be a learning curve. But we are getting there. If I see what was happening 10 years back to now, there's significant progress. You will see an inflection point, where we will eventually overcome those hurdles.
Yeah, that's a great thing to hear, actually. The point is that regulations should be such that it shouldn't go to the experts as deterrents. And that's where I think a lot of people have hesitation whether we do the trials here and then it gets hit into a kind of a roadblock, and a subject expert committee sits on it for several months and there is no outcome. I think that's, again, a big problem. Of course, things have become a lot better than what it was in the past. Sanjeev, you've mentioned about TRICOG, and a lot of countries have actually taken it up in terms of the ECG side, right? In terms of having quick results in hard complications. So my question, you're the voice of MNC here. So in terms of the placement, the positioning of our country, how do you see MNCs, the point of view of MNCs? Are they open to having more, structural collaborations with Indian companies? QRAI is, of course, exceptionally great company, but do you see that actually happening in larger numbers?
So I think, as I said, again, I always start with the purpose. Our purpose, wherever we are, we need to ensure that how we can make a meaningful difference to the patients. And at the same time, for us, science and innovation is important. So one part is science. So for example, just an example, we had global sales of $45 billion, and out of which approximately $10 billion is spent in R&D. right? And it's something like antibody drug conjugates, and in future cell therapy or let's say gene therapy or radio conjugates, which we are talking about. So we are discovering different innovative platforms, and we recently announced our ADC end-to-end ADC factory in Singapore, in which we are spending about more than $1.5 billion for cancer drugs, monoclonal antibodies. So one part is that how do you bring innovation and our smart factories. So our factories are now, we are looking at how can we make our factories zero carbon from day one. So at that level, we are working on. And of course, some factories will take some time to get to our overall ambition by 2030 is to be carbon negative as a company. We have stated that ambition in across the world by 25, we want to be carbon zero and carbon negative by 2030. So that's one part of doing thing. Now we have to get this to each country. We can't achieve that across globally if we don't do that in each country. And same thing which we are doing, as I mentioned, that Global Innovation Technology Center, which we have in in Chennai and also in Bangalore, which is looking at global business services, innovation technology, R&D services, and how do we predict success of clinical trial early through technology. Now we are doing this in India. So we are, the GITC, which we have in Chennai, is and Bangalore put together, is probably the biggest nerve center across the globe. And we have 2 sites out of 7, 8 sites across the world. We are strengthening as a multinational, strengthening our footprint at a larger scale. And our global business services and GITC is one of the big ones across the world. We have 3,500 people. And when we announced the investment of 230 crores, we said we will hire 1,300 more people to take talent of India in the digital space. So we are doing at large, and we celebrated 10 years of AstraZeneca unlisted entity in India this year, and we are celebrating 45 years of AstraZeneca Pharma, which is I lead the listed company together. So to answer your question, we are going beyond. We are, this Cure AI or TriCog is an outcome of our partnership with the Innovation Hub along with Swedish Embassy. And if you remember, Sweden-India partnership, which has happened globally, how do we bring this to India? So these startups, Cure AI, we are launched in many other countries. TriCog is now being used in many other countries. So we are doing, as a multinational company, we are doing in India. But when you see GITC, we are India for the world. So it's not only that we are doing it here, we are doing together. The second part of partnership and technology, we can't scale unless we partner with different organizations or even with the government. So we partner with Karnataka government to bring AI-led X-ray screening to detect lung cancer early, reduce the disease burden across the state. Then we went to government of Goa, we partnered there. So we will need to partner across and different stakeholders to ensure we are driven by that purpose, reduce the disease burden and help early diagnosis and cancer. So one part is bringing the treatment, but we are also working very hard on the upstreams, right from screening and diagnosis early, and through the value chain, can we make it more sustainable across these things. So we are doing a lot in India. Strengthening a real good strengthened footprint over many years. And last 10 years has been actually also bringing innovative medicine faster to India, early screening and diagnosis, and technology has been a very, very important part to get there.
I think that's the most ideal situation to have. MNC or an Indian company, the technology comes from a startup. I mean, Cure AI is how long is, not more than 10 years, I think. And then the government actually taking a very key role of early detection. I think if that is something that can be replicated across the states, I think that's how situations can change. In a resource-constrained country like ours, and probably also a lot of LMICs. So yeah, so we had 2 rounds, and the clock is showing 43 seconds left. So maybe I can borrow a few questions, a few minutes from Bhavna, and throw it to the audiences. Yeah, I see one hand up there. Sir, brevity is the soul of wit. So if you can be short, yeah, invoking Shakespeare here, not right, but yeah, short introduction, and then we can take it to the next.
Sure. Myself, Dr. Vishwarup Nanda. Uh, Thanks to the all panelists. It's a beautiful session we have seen. I just want to mention few points. I have spent more than 21 years in pharmaceutical research. I have very closely seen the rise of Sun Pharma like company. I was with Spark also, Sun Pharma Research, and few other first 5 top Indian companies. I think there was one discussion, what is the gap? What is the major gap in between this innovation and market? So my personal opinion is, when there are few things. One is return of investment, because majority of the companies always they
So,
prefer.
concise question, please.
Yeah. I have to say
Because
some
of
few
paucity
points.
of time, apologies.
Okay. So this generic market research, coming to the main point, generic market research has completely destroyed the innovation in India. That is my point. Because few companies, like I have seen Akum Drugs also, they have shown some courage. They have shown some courage. I am not taking the name of other companies, to do some innovation and launch the product in Indian market. So I think there must be some balance between research, innovation, and generic market.
Okay. Anybody would like to contribute to that point? Any of our speakers? Maybe let's just, yeah, please.
See, these are two sides of the same coin, right? The question is that when you are running such a large country where you have resource constraint, right? We are just 2,500 USD average income for an Indian. And therefore, affordability and access becomes the critical pivot, right? Today, if you look at in terms of budgetary allocation or even in terms of purchases done by the government, they have almost doubled up in this decade, right? Post-COVID, suddenly it has shot up, but otherwise also it has maintained to that standard. So one is you're able to improve the access and affordability for the population. Second is because of the low income, you're not able to tax much to the lower middle class. And therefore the affordability takes precedence over funding of such kind of R&D cases which are very, very costly, right? Though a lot of efforts have gone in, and if you look at it in terms of, little strides that have happened over the last couple of decades, last 5 years have seen 4 companies in India registering their NCE, which has never happened in the past. So it is not that innovation is not happening. Second piece is that you are looking at just the NCE program, but look at the incremental innovation that Indian platforms bring, right? All the Indian companies who are sitting on this stage or outside this, they are all doing incremental innovation in all the therapies across the basket. Where do you find some of the real combinations which are going to improve the compliance for the patient? They are first approved in India and then globally they are taken, right? You'll have multiple such examples. So that not only improves the access for the patient, compliance for the patient, but more important, the affordability part, which is key for our country. That's my small bit.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, a lot of small innovations, like how Achin mentioned, have actually gone underappreciated, because that's why I said, whether there is a scope to make it into a global scale. So yeah, that was a good question. I think...
One question we can encourage, just one final. Let's give it to the gentleman out there. Just a small request to keep the question concise. We're already out of overshot by 3 minutes, but we'd like to give another person an opportunity.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for this amazing panel. So I have this specific question for Dr. Sanjeev, because I'll be
a brief introduction, if we can know your
My name
name.
is Ankit Shingala, and I'm from Abbott. I could resonate with Dr. Sanjeev because of the compliance protocols which we have in MNCs. So my question is, considering that we have this entire revolution which is happening around technology, and our objective being patient care and making sure that they get that effective medication, and we have these regulations which are coming in, because I am from the compliance background. We have a lot of regulations. Recently, we have come up with UCPMP, UCMPMD, etc. How do we ensure that the intermediaries in between, the HCPs, the HCIs, through whom the patients are getting this care, how do we remain compliant and make sure that this technology is actually benefiting the patients? That's what my question is.
again, I always start by saying the purpose is to make the most meaningful difference to our patients. Early diagnosis, early screening is important for us. And at the same time, you see this new codes across the world. It is absolutely important that we remain compliant. And UCPMP is new thing which is there. We just follow the laws of the land and deliver that way. That's the best thing I would say. We need to ensure, again, the important thing is we need to do right for the patient, right for the country, and ensure that we're doing this in a most compliant way. So they follow the rules.
Thank you. And with that, we'd like to give a big round of applause to all our eminent speakers.